Okay, lovely. Well, for one, welcome to Terminal NYC at Earshot. This is the first time, we can sit down now. This is the first time we're doing a terminal not at the OG Eternal office. Rip to a real one, but all good things come to an end. You know, this one is a really special one because the homies at Earshot are allowing us to gather. Two, we have a really unique chance to sit down with Freddy in New York, which, you know, if you watch the video from when we did this in San Francisco, you know that, you know, folks like Freddy, folks that, you know, designed at Apple on the human interface design team there, you know, they don't make it out to New York, and if they do, they're like really quiet about it. And so it's good to build these bridges. It's good to kind of take some time to sit down with folks like this and talk about sort of the past, present, and future of design and hardware and AI. And we're going to get into a lot of that. You know, Terminal really started because if you were in New York around, you know, 2017, 2018, you'd know if you were young, there wasn't like much of a community for folks building things, and you know, you might have been like the youngest person at Oscar Health or something like that. And so it's really amazing to see how New York tech has grown, to see how much young people have really taken over that narrative. And this is like a real celebration of that, and having talks, having demos. That's what Terminal's all about, getting dope people in a room. And I think this is a really special room. We had like 260 requests to be here. We had to like turn away a big portion of those folks. So, you know, I think this is like the most special room in New York right now. And we should just kind of take some time to appreciate that. Los, I swear to God. Anyway, so without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Freddy Anzures. All right. Boy, oh boy.
How do you want to start this?
Back like we never. Well, I got a few things. Okay. I have a few pieces.
Reggie knows how to freestyle, so we about to freestyle.
We freestyled SF.
We about to spar right now.
New York, I feel an extra bit of responsibility. I think to start, you know, people saw sort of like what I wrote down about you. I think maybe we should just kind of like do a really quick, brief history.
Sure.
But I actually want to start with something that probably most people don't know. I know, and that's the fact that you pretty much like grew up on Howard's campus in DC. So why don't you kind of talk about growing up like at Howard and how that influenced a lot of, you know, your practice and your views.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for coming. I know people were partying late last night. Charles. So I'm really excited that everybody's made time to enjoy this conversation with this dude and I'm really an admiration of this cat. So, you know, you got a real superstar over here in New York. Yeah, let's talk about Howard. So I grew up right outside of Washington, D.C. in Maryland. And my parents were very fortunate to work at a pretty important historical black college called Howard University. Has anybody attended that or know it or shout out?
You went to Howard?
Yeah.
What?
Okay, word. Okay. Nia, yeah? Yeah. Okay. So shout out to Nia for going to Howard. But Howard University to me, and I'm not trying to date myself, but I grew up on Howard's campus. Throughout the 90s, let's say. All throughout the 1990s. And as many of you know, I'm sure there's a lot of music heads here, the 90s were like a really important time for music, especially for black music, hip-hop music, R&B music. And if you were in DC at that time, it was a real golden era for music. So, is that Norm over there?
Yeah, Norm just walked in.
What up? My mom was the when people learn that I came up at Howard, people tend to think that, oh, are your parents professors? So my parents immigrated from the Philippines like a year before I was born. Actually, my mom was pregnant on the plane coming to Washington, D.C. from the Philippines. So I was conceived in the Philippines, and if you should do this. Like, if you look 9 months before your birthday and just look at what was going on in the world, that says a lot about you. So, for me, 9 months before I was born, in the Philippines, was the Thriller in Manila, Muhammad Ali fight. Okay? So for something that was so U.S. pop culture to happen in the Philippines, like, and then I was born, you tend to try to mythologize yourself type shit. But so that happened 9 months before. I'm curious what happened 9 months before you were born. You remember?
My parents got busy. I don't know. I don't know.
So my mom was pregnant with me when she came to DC, and my mom worked at Howard, and she happened to be the executive assistant of the first black female dean of the College of Medicine. This woman named Eleanor Eisen Franklin. Really beautiful lady, super like mother figure type vibes. When I was a kid, my mom would bring me in and she would always like, you know, just say like, oh, you're so talented, and you're like, I was drawing a lot, and my mom was always sharing like drawings with you know, the dean of the College of Medicine. And so to me, like going to Howard, my dad worked at the Howard University Hospital, and he provided a lot of the supplies for a lot of the medical students there. So both my parents were actively working at this historical black college growing up. And my mom knew that I was really creative and interested in like art. It just so happened the very first art classes I took were at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. I don't know if anybody, who's from D.C. or is hip to D.C. stuff? Okay, word, okay, good. So Smithsonian is a museum institution in D.C. And if you grow up in D.C. as a creative person, one of the things you realize when you move from D.C. is that the museums aren't free elsewhere. I feel like the museums being free in DC really created a foundation for me to be open to a lot of different styles of art, painting, sculpture. You just kind of thought that, oh, this stuff was just free for everybody. But then the moment you moved, you have to, you know, like, what, you have to pay like $20 to get in here? Like, so I think there was something about that art world being free as a kid during that time that I think really also inspired me. But to keep it short, my mom and dad saw a creative spark in me and encouraged me to go with them to work. It's 9-to-5 job throughout all of my high school summers to work in the college print department. My mom, you know, she's from the Philippines. She's an immigrant. You know, you'd be very fortunate as an immigrant to really understand the art world or design world. And so her kind of knowledge of that was like, oh, well, we're friends with the print people at the college, you know, who make all the little brochures and the slides, and they look like they do art. So why don't you come and be an intern there? And then that kept me out of trouble. That kept me with them. And so I would literally get up in the morning with them as they were getting ready to go to work, 9-to-5 job, Monday through Friday, high school summers to work at Howard University in the print department of Howard.
That's the wild thing about the print department in particular is kind of just like, there's a lot of mythology, I think, with like designers sort of discovering a medium like print, like calligraphy, again, mythos, and how that leads to like broader sort of like design arcs, right? And so I know you go to Carnegie Mellon, study industrial design, and then you sort of have I guess the movement at that time, this is mid-90s, right, is like, you know, not wanting to like contribute to broader like waste cycles,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And that kind of brings you to like frog design and doing digital design, the earliest of it. Come on, I'm locked into your mythos.
Okay.
So yeah, kind of maybe like talk about kind of like getting to like frog and then how that brings you to Apple.
Yeah, appreciate it. So when I was at Howard, one of the things that was really special to me is that there were two people at Howard University that were students at the school. There was one cat named Brian who was a DJ, and his friend Leon. They were like kind of homies. And so this connects to what I'm about to say. So there was a music tape, record CD tape store on Howard's campus called Nobody Beats the Wiz. And when I was in school, I wish I had this. I had a little Sony Sports Walkman, the yellow one.
Yeah.
I totally would have brought it if I knew it was going to come up. So I remember going to that music store on campus and getting like all my hip hop tapes. I was really into hip hop. I was really listening to hip hop in my headphones. And I would go back to Howard print shop and be like, "Yo, can we listen to my tapes and stuff?" But I knew that they didn't want to give some Filipino kid access to the aux. Oh, I guess it wasn't called the aux.
Yeah.
The boom box.
Yeah. The metaphorical aux of the
Yeah,
time.
the metaphorical aux. Because like the one DJ Brian, he would make mixtapes and stuff, and so there was one moment where I was like really, I had a bit more confidence. Like, yo, I got this tape. It was Paul's Boutique Beastie Boys, and this particular album in 1989 was one of the very first pioneering albums that contained all samples. Like the album was consisted of all samples of other pre-recorded records, collage type thing. So
Public Figma file. if
yes,
you will.
yeah.
I'm trying to translate to that.
Yeah. Please,
This was a
please.
public Figma file.
Please.
what we're talking.
Please. So I went back to the print shop and was like, "Yo, man, you gotta hear this tape. It's like dope." And like they were like, "All right, we'll give you a chance." And so I put the thing in, and then
Were you like nervous?
I was nervous
Because whenever you show people music that you really
I
like,
was nervous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
showing
no-
people your taste is a very vulnerable activity.
Yeah, and I was like 10, 12 years old,
Oh,
13
yeah,
years old.
you're just like a rabbit.
Yeah. So I was like, took a chance on myself.
Yeah.
So bet on yourself, early as you can, and was like, yo, you need to hear this tape. So I gave them the tape. They were like, okay, we'll humor you. And they put the tape in, and I don't know if anybody knows that album, but there's one particular song that sampled a very classic soul song by an artist, Curtis Mayfield, Superfly soundtrack. And they were like, that's not Beastie Boys, that's Curtis Mayfield. And I was like, who? And they were like, we're gonna take you under our wing, bro.
Education time.
It's like, yo, like you bring all your rap tapes, and we're gonna show you all the source material, all the original people that did that. And I feel like looking back, that was a really, really special exchange intergenerationally, where you had a bunch of people that were in college that were taking a chance on this kid that just had a energy, a passion for stuff, and they put me up on super free game. Like all my friends that were my age, they would be like, oh, you heard this EPMD or Big Daddy Kane or whatever? Like, no, that's James Brown. That's Marvin Gaye. That's Sly and the Family Stone. That's Curtis Mayfield. That's Stevie Wonder. And they were like, what is that?
Yeah.
And I was just so fortunate to have mentors from a musical point of view. And again, I was there for art,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So that kind of cross-cultural understanding of some people that were older than me giving me a chance to learn,
Yeah.
I feel like that pattern, it's something that I want to continue to do myself.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like that really speaks to the sort of what happens when environment allows for that cross-pollination, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like you said, you like came into that print studio to do kind of like art and get like working with these materials. Music is constantly playing. Music fills all environment, acoustic space.
Yeah.
And as a young person, I think there's a special tie with youth and music. You take a chance on yourself to show them something that you're getting into,
Yes.
and that cross-pollination of both like the music and the design and the print and the space itself, separated from your parents, which also I think has a really big impact when you're like 13. For me, that was like, I grew up playing like competitive golf, so my parents would just like drop me off at the golf course.
Yeah.
And the golf course is like the most posh and also the most like degenerate place on earth. You learn so much that you shouldn't learn as a 13-year-old on the golf course, you know? And I think probably the same is true. Like you probably just heard them talking about dates that they had as college kids. That imprints on your like, 12, 13
Do you
year old
remember
psyche.
something that you learned on the golf course that you felt like was some secret shit that you didn't, that as a kid?
I mean, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was my first time on betting, like on the like whole concept of like betting on yourself.
Yeah.
It was the first time I started betting on myself. So naturally, I was small for my age. And so it was like 13-year-old small black kid on a golf course. Older white guys who are retired playing golf nonstop. And so I would gamble. I just started
That sounds like
gambling.
tech.
Yeah, it sounds like tech. It's pretty much tech. And so, you know, I started gambling because I was so confident I would beat them.
We got to go there.
Yeah. I was just so confident I would beat them, and so I didn't have cash. I would just be like, I bet you, you know, $20, $25, I'll beat you on these next 9 holes. And then they would be like, in their minds, like literally taking
Like
candy
on-
from a baby.
Right.
And then I would beat them, and they'll be like,
Yeah.
shit. Not only did we lose to like a 13-year-old kid,
Hell yeah.
but we lost to like a short black 13-year-old kid
Hell
who's
yeah.
like popping his collar, you know, because I was just like really into. I was like listening to Vampire Weekend nonstop. It was like that's who young Reggie was a very same. We're all that version of ourselves somewhere,
Yeah.
you know. And so I think like gambling was like that was kind of like the
Oh,
thing
shit.
I like kind of got hip to.
Oh, wow.
But in my mind it wasn't gambling, right? It was just kind of like
Betting
no,
on
I'm gonna just parlay this.
Yeah. You know, when you bring up golf,
I guess that's gambling. Someone laughed. I'm like, you know what? I do sound like an addict right now.
when you bring up golf, the thing that relates to me during that time was that I was really in music bands. Like I played the oboe in high school. I was like all-state oboe player, like classical
Yeah.
ass shit.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, being into classical music all throughout high school, where this is another interesting, I think, story to exchange too. So my high school was a high school called DeMatha Catholic High School. It was in DC, all boys.
Yeah.
All boys.
I did not. I went to public school.
Okay. All boys, like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I mean, is that
Yeah.
is that too? Am I old?
No.
Okay.
I watched Fresh Prince.
Okay, good. So blazers, uniforms, the whole thing, and so the band program at my high school was a world-renowned music program. My band director is a guy named John Mitchell. He had started the program in 1970. Been there like 20 plus years. I was in high school in the 90s. And so we were always winning awards. Like every year, our band, like no matter what configuration, it was always like the #1 Catholic high school band in the nation type vibe. And there was a point where I started to wonder, like, why is it? Why is this dude able to like straight up every time get that?
Yeah.
The thing is about John Mitchell, and something that I learned when I'm starting to like mentor people of my own, is that he was somebody that really understood a person's potential and was able to, as a band director, pick musical pieces that really complemented the strengths of the particular combination of people at the time in that year. And so the oboe was very much a soloistic instrument. I wasn't as confident in myself when I was younger to want to do that, because I actually grew up playing saxophone, but the oboe had the same fingering, and it's one of the most challenging instruments. Andre 3000 actually says this himself. He plays oboe now with his new shit, so I gotta tap in with Andre 3000. Whoever knows. I mean to say that he was really sensitive to the different combinations of people to pick a music piece that would really bring out the strength of that band at the time.
Yeah.
And I think with any sort of creative direction, art direction, design direction, when you're working with a team, you need somebody who, A, is able to be sensitive to the potential of people that you're working with, the kind of like expertise that's on the team. Like oftentimes when you're putting together a team to result in a creative effort, it's like, it's based on who's available, not who's good. You know? And then there's people that may not have had experience, but are really passionate about doing it.
Yeah.
And it's those people, to me, like I was one of those people. I didn't know, like, this goes into Apple. I didn't know how to do any sort of user interface design.
Sure.
But my friend and partner, Imran, saw potential in me to do that, and he believed in me, and he was like, yo, you could do this shit.
Yeah.
And like, come over here. So I'm kind of jumping.
Yeah. I mean, that's the perfect layup.
I'm jumping. But we got to talk about,
You didn't say frog to...
Oh yeah. So
So getting to frog.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, yeah, like time travel.
Yeah, in case you're wondering, basically all of mine and Freddy's conversations span 4 hours. We won't do this to y'all, but yeah, you're seeing a little glimpse of that.
Yeah, so I was at Carnegie Mellon for 4 years, or actually 5 years. I took a year off. I didn't know I wanted...
What did you do that year?
I interned at Converse, this footwear company in North Reading, Massachusetts, and designed shoes.
Swag.
There was a time that Dennis Rodman was their ambassador, so I was doing Dennis Rodman footwear shit.
Okay.
And then I was here actually in New York at this like housewares design firm.
Cool.
So I knew I didn't want to go into industrial design. To your point about at that time during the 90s, there was a lot of conversation around landfills and like, oh, do we need more plastic shit and
more objects.
Yeah, and I was just like, I don't really want to contribute to that. But I freaking studied this shit, so what am I going to do? Am I going to like not use my degree? Am I going to like transition to some other thing? And I really was interested in this company Frog Design, which is a design firm that did a bunch of, they would be a firm that if you had an idea, they would do the product, the logo, the website, like they call it convergent projects. And then it just so happened that Frog Design was the design company that Steve Jobs hired in the 80s to do the Apple industrial design language for the products during the 80s. So the famous 1984 commercial, I'm sure people know that, that was Frog Design's design language. It was a design language called Snow White. That was like all the different products had sort of a similar kind of design theme. That was Hartmut Esslinger was the founder, and then it was Frog Design. So when I graduated from Carnegie Mellon, I went to Carnegie Mellon because Andy Warhol went to Carnegie Mellon. And that connects to learning in the Smithsonian. Because when I saw the freaking soup cans when I was 5, I was like, yo, that's art. Like, I want to do that.
Yep.
And so I went to the school that Andy Warhol went to. And then from there, I graduated and moved to San Francisco to take on a job at Frog Design, where I was doing a lot of this convergent products, industrial design, graphic design, web design. The first year that I was there was in 1999 in San Francisco. It was a .com e-commerce boom.
Yep.
And I was 23 at the time. There was a big show at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art about footwear, future footwear. And I was like, yo, I worked at Converse, I want to do that. So I ended up, my first year at Frog, working on like a freaking future footwear concept that ended up in the MoMA, SF MoMA. And then that year, GQ magazine came to San Francisco and did this like expose on like, .com era people, and like, so they picked me to be a part of it, and I was on the front spread of that. So I was 23 years old.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what San Francisco was.
What do you think that did to you, like psychologically, to be sort of put up like that so quickly? I think this is like a big theme because like the meme in tech, or one of many memes, is just like, when someone gets Forbes 30 under 30, you're just like, okay, how long are they going to get until they're outed as like a fraud? Right. So like, I think there's like a big like perception now, or at least a slight meme, particularly around Forbes 30 under 30, around like the earlier you're recognized, the more likely you are to be a fraud. Oh, sure. And I'm curious about, do people agree with that? Am I making this up? No. Okay, cool. And so just making sure I'm not going crazy.
That is a meme or it's true?
I mean, what's the difference? There's been enough frauds per like 30 under 30 classes that I think it is true enough to warrant the meme, is what I would say. But I guess on a personal level, right? Because I think everyone gets their like 15 minutes at some point, and then it happens multiple times. Like, what did it mean to be 23
in GQ?
In GQ, which is just like goated, and then and then I assume shortly after that is when you kind of connected with Imran, which slid you to Apple, right? So that's a crazy arc, right? Yeah. It's like you take a year off, which probably always feels a little crazy. Go back to school, leave, go to SF from the East Coast, get the GQ piece, parlay that into Apple, and it's kind of like, I mean, the GOAT shit is about to happen. Yeah. So
it's
what do you think that did?
Batman Begins type shit. So. Yeah. I knew when I was in the GQ magazine, I was like, yo, nobody got Steez over here and stuff like that. So
still true.
So that, I didn't really. I'd like to consider myself a pretty humble person when it comes to those kind of things.
But I'd say so.
I was really to be featured in that magazine from the perspective of tech, but that's a kind of a fashion
Mhm.
or men's lifestyle
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like I grew up going to libraries all my life, looking at stuff like that for inspiration, taking books out, looking at magazines, looking at GQ, that kind of thing. So it wasn't surprising that I was going to be in that, I guess, because
Sure.
I'm just so used to just things like that happening, and it's like, oh, that's just another thing. And but to your point about how that transitions into post-fraud
Yeah.
Apple days, and it's an interesting parallel because when I was at Howard doing print design stuff, but parallel tracking the music knowledge, when I went to Frog doing the convergent design stuff, I was like, you know what, I got to do other things outside of this that keeps my soul alive.
Yeah.
You know? And I just didn't think like doing design at the time was like fulfilling like every aspect of my interest.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I'm obviously into music, and so I started DJing. I started designing club flyers.
Yeah.
And designing club flyers, it's like, okay, I'm learning. I graduated with an industrial design degree. I went to Howard doing graphic design, I guess. How can I combine these things to satisfy an interest that I didn't have at the job that I had at the time? So I started designing club flyers, and that eventually led into DJing parties.
Yeah.
And that extended into a DJ night that some friends and I did, a monthly night, that's where I met Imran.
Got it.
Because the event that we had kind of like this, it gravitated a lot of interesting kind of cross-cultural, cross-genre creative types into a space to commune and listen to music and hang out. But then those ended up becoming networking sessions for like, oh, yo, I'm thinking about leaving my spot. You guys hiring or blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
So I ended up meeting Imran through DJing. And so that's an interesting kind of connection to somebody that eventually would become like a creative partner.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of like, again, I think this is just gonna be a theme, like mythos around like Apple design culture. I remember reading a whole thing about like the industrial design group and how they always just have like, they're always blaring music in the studio and blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, meeting Imran at a club night, that turning into you joining like the human interface group. Yeah, well, I think this is like a really good section to just get into like straight design talk. Like,
Yeah, sure.
What was the culture of the human interface design group in, what year is this, 2000?
This is 2004.
2004. So what's the culture of the human interface design group in 2004?
Yeah.
Is it blasting music? Is it actually quite silent? Is it siloed? Is it collaborative?
Yeah.
How, like, the politics of it,
Yeah.
you know, because a lot of personalities have come out of Apple design, obviously.
Yeah. So I feel like Steve Jobs really protected our team. I got a sense that the human interface group at the time with Steve was the soul of the company and the product. Because it's literally the thing that you interact with. You know, you're actually using it.
Yeah.
It's like, I tend to think that a lot of the industrial design is the frame, and human interface is the art. And so the frame, the picture frame, and the human interface is the art, the actual art. So I think that in 2004, just to give you a sense of timing, I started at Apple February 17th, 2004. That weekend, or around that time, College Dropout came. Just so you know, it was that era, okay? So College Dropout comes out, I'm listening to that.
Yeah.
As I'm entering my career into Apple. That is in my headphones as I'm going into Infinite Loop to help me.
What track were you kind of like on repeat?
Spaceship.
Yeah. The collective crowd.
Yeah. And look at the building now.
Yeah. Literal flying saucer.
saying.
Some might say.
Yeah. So that album really helped me through
Yeah.
because a lot of what he was talking, and it's kind of emotional.
Yeah.
A lot of what he was talking about was like being an outlier,
Yeah.
you know. So I went into Apple with that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about those times. It was challenging. Like
Yeah.
seriously, it was like really emotional to work at a spot like that.
Yeah.
Because you didn't see a lot of people that looked like you.
Yeah.
You know.
Did you feel like I think something about the music that Ye puts out? I remember in the Zane Lowe Yeezus interview, he talks about sort of like being the espresso, like the thing that he's both like the expresser of an idea, but
Yeah.
also like the thing that sort of just gives you the energy to go do
Yeah.
X, Y, Z. Like, did
Totally.
you feel like that was like
Yeah,
a shield
that's what it was.
for
Yeah,
you?
absolutely,
in that
absolutely. I
environment?
mean, absolutely. Like, I would say one of the aspects of why Imran brought me onto the team was he was also probably dealing with similar things.
Yeah.
You know, he needed like a homie that he could relate to.
What is it like, kind of like, you know, essentially just like producing ideas and interface in a one very elite talented group, right? Like I think one thing that's hard to understand externally is when every single person in a team is like kind of like top of their field, right? Like
Yeah.
there's very rare moments when you're in a room like that,
Yeah.
right? So like, what is it like producing ideas in a space like that, then getting an idea through in a space like that for a product like, just for simplicity's sake, like the iPhone,
Yeah.
right? Because you got several ideas through
Yeah.
on the iPhone, which I'm sure was a very competitive sort of like,
Sure.
I want my idea in here, I want my idea in
Yeah.
here, blah, blah, blah.
Well, in hindsight, no one knew the potential of that thing. So to want to
Did it feel that naked in,
Yeah.
in the moment? It didn't
Yeah.
feel like
no, I mean
this
we
could
were.
flop?
It wasn't. BlackBerry was the dominant phone.
Sure.
Keyboards, like plastic
Yeah.
keyboards.
Chiclet.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
kind of phones, you know. So to like take a bet on like a touchscreen phone, which was new, no one was like really. Oh, I want to be all about that.
Sure.
You know, and I feel like it takes a certain sense of confidence to believe in something that no one else believes in. You know,
Yeah.
especially knowing that you have some impact on it.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, if you believe in yourself to make that shit pop off, it's gonna pop off.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then it's not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. How do you bring like sort of like the references in to the like literal design work
Oh, yeah.
for a medium that literally doesn't exist yet? You know, like that translation act, I think is
Word,
so
yeah. So
hard.
yeah, it's a touchscreen, guys. Like, I don't know, everybody, it's so commonplace now.
Yeah, we take it for granted.
But you didn't have touchscreens in your pocket before, you know? So when you're sensitive to a new technology that people are foreign to,
There was no touchscreens anywhere also.
yeah, I mean, well, the touchscreen to me, so it's a great transition. So the only real pop cultural touchscreen was ATMs. Okay, ATMs were like the thing that people knew as touchscreens. So that's another thing. As a designer, you want to be sensitive to. Okay, what are people up on? What's familiar to people? You know, how are you as a creative person the voice for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because not everybody's looking at the world like you are. The world is all full of ideas. You know, you can look anywhere. You don't have to look at the internet. It's actually doper reality.
Yeah.
Really. All the shit that's on the internet is from here.
Yeah.
You know? So let's establish that first, right? But to get to your point about the translation moment, so the moment you realize that everything that's designed is designed by people who don't want to improve shit, that's a Steve Jobs bar. He was like, yo, like, that shit, man, like, yeah, somebody made that. I could do something better than that shit. So it was that mentality. So I was like, okay, there's this touchscreen phone we're working on. Steve wants it to be a thing. Okay, we gotta hook bro up. You know? he's not outside like us. He's on private jets and shit.
Yeah.
I'm outside. I know I'm outside.
Yeah.
I'm on an airplane to New York, visiting my brother.
But there's people sitting around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working on how to lock some shit with my sketchbook.
Yeah.
And then I go to the bathroom and I see this fucking slide, the lock in the bathroom, and it's like, oh, bro, that's that shit.
Yeah.
That's that shit. You know?
Yeah.
So all y'all take bathrooms on airplanes? That's where that comes from.
Yeah. I think there's you know. Sorry, I'm trying to think of a real elegant way to get us out of the bathroom. But
Meet me in the bathroom.
meet me in the bathroom. You know, I think
Strokes.
there's a lot of like, again, like I just keep coming back to mythology, right? Because something that I think I reflect a lot, and I have like sort of like the benefit of our friendship and like some of the privacy there, is just sort of like really hearing how something comes about and demystifying just like eye in the sky, you know, fake stories that you get because they sound good but actually have nothing to do with like the reality of like building building with a team, building a net new thing. I know you're on a new sort of like net new journey as a creative partner at Humane. I know also you sort of joined later in that journey, but you've always been around. And I'm just kind of curious, like, what are some of the design questions that you have in your mind now, you know, for an entirely new interface, right? It's predominantly audio first. You're coming from this world. We can't pull necessarily the same metaphors from desktop computing that we were able to pull for, you know, mobile computing. And then the final thing that you and I talk about a lot is sort of like, it's the first computer that really points out instead of reflects in. And we're seeing this a lot with AI Pendant, some other things that signed friend VAs on that also point out. How do you think about, I guess, starting point, what's like the number one design question you have as you think about sort of making the pen genuinely useful, enjoyable, lovely for people to use, regardless of, you know, not thinking about like iPhone scale or anything like that.
That's a great question. The pen to me is actually the real iPhone, but EYE, because
you know we're recording this, right?
Yeah.
That's gonna go out.
It keeps your eyes free. And that's the thing to me is like we haven't freed our eyes, guys and gals. You know, we're so used to looking at things in between you and I that we just accepted that way of relating to the internet or technology, that there's always like a screen between me and my environment, you know? And to me, like, I think that one of the challenging things that Humane has, given the fact that a lot of the people at Humane worked on this, is how to give people a choice. I feel like everybody's programmed right now with some of these things because there hasn't been any sort of alternatives or choices given. So like imagine if like you only had a car. Car was the only way you can get to point A to point B, right? And somebody offered you a bike. Say, yo, I got a bike, bro. You got to use your body though. You know, you're not inside some shit. You're outside, and there are these controls. This is more natural. And why would I ride a bike? That doesn't do what my car does. It's not as fast as my car. It's a choice, man. Like you could ride a bike. Like look at how happy that cat is on his bike, bro.
It's the best way to see the city.
So to me, it's like it's just a choice. It's not no replacement. Everybody be like, oh, you know, is a bike gonna replace a car? You know, but if you think about transportation, there's a bike, there's a car, there's trains, there's freaking bikes you could take out over here. I took a city bike with Imran just the other day with Yanir over here. You know, so it's like there are multiple ways to get around. But for some reason, everybody's like, the phone is the only way I gotta connect to that. You know, and anything else that I see, fuck that.
Yeah, it makes me think about like I haven't been, but like it makes me think about like Copenhagen. Like Copenhagen, the predominant way to get around is like a bike, right? And that actually like creates a very definitive quality about that city, about that space, about that psyche space.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's just take 1 million people, right? Like we have cities where New York, 8 million people all have an iPhone or a derivative of the iPhone.
Sure.
Like what would it mean for a city like New York to only have Humane pins? Like what is the cultural shift, the spiritual shift, the communal shift that happens as a function of like that core human interaction changing?
Yeah. Well, then you start to realize that the tools that people use affect the behavior of the people
Right.
in the environment. So you bring up Copenhagen, you bring up Europe, you bring up places that are dominantly bikes, and if you evaluate the way that they relate to each other as opposed to people that aren't on bikes or in cars or on phones, it's different.
Yeah.
There's no judgment. It's just like, okay, you're gonna choose this way over that way because you're maybe used to it, or you don't want to open yourself up to something else, and then that's gonna affect your whole life, basically. So to me, it's like, I think what we're entering now is that, and it's New York Fashion Week, which is, I think, interesting to have this talk. New York Fashion Week, fashion in general is about personal style, expressiveness, like style, right? Everybody has theme in here, I can see. Like, the way that you relate to technology is also going to be a style. Relating to screens is just one style, guys. It's just one style. There's multiple styles to how you interact with technology. If you're open, you don't gotta wear bell bottoms every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you don't gotta wear Patagonia every day or Balenciaga or whatever every day. You might want to fuck with, I don't know, Yeezy one day and then like fucking what's the LaFleur, you know?
Yeah.
Or freaking Virgil.
Yeah.
You know, rest in peace. So it's like, if y'all creative cats are open to style from that point of view, you surely should be open to technology from different points of view too. It's the same to me.
Yeah. So this is the last question I'll ask before going to just some rapid fire tweets that I pulled from yours and then Q&A.
Sure.
But you know, I think the question of like setting up alternatives, like serious alternatives to known computing paradigms, right? I have this question around like solving base level problems, right? So like we all have the need to communicate fluidly. We all have a need to direct ourselves within like the environment fluidly versus solving problems brought on by our current set of technology, right? So I think like one very basic critique is like, oh, like the pin is just trying to like solve for the style question of relating to screens, but it doesn't like solve any like new maybe base level problem that I have, right? Or maybe it can, but it's going to take some time because core 17 years of like the iPhone versus like what we haven't even had the pin for a year. How do you think about like that with like new hardware?
Yeah. On my way to this spot, I met Sean at Dover Street Market.
God damn.
I needed to pull up to Dover just to get something. I've been into like fragrances and shit. Okay. I feel like the sense of smell, I think is kind of underrated for designers.
Agreed.
We always think about like eyes and ears and that kind of thing. So I've been kind of getting it. You see my incense. This is a Aesop Kagago.
I trust.
Anyway.
We can edit that right now.
Yeah. So I bring this up because when I met Sean at Dover, he was like, "Yo, Reggie, you need to get here before 1:30, bro. Reggie's got stressing out." And it was like, no, he wasn't stressed out. He wasn't stressed out.
We'll talk about that later.
He wanted to be on time, like mingle with y'all. So I was like, "Yo, I just need 5 minutes. I need to get." You can't really check in like fragrance bottles because you don't know how big that shit. They're going to compensate that shit during security. You don't know how many freaking cologne, perfume, gets taken. Like, oh man, security bro gonna smell real good.
They all smell great.
Yeah. So the funny thing about this will kind of connect to this. So I went to it's a third floor where all the Comme des Garçons stuff is.
Yeah.
And I saw this zero shit. I don't know what this smells like. Nisrin, you know what it smells like?
I do.
Okay.
You know, have you smelled concrete?
Yes.
Concrete.
It smells like that?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Oh, it smells like. Oh.
Yo, you know what a banana tastes like? Yeah, you ever have an apple?
So.
That's 2 strikes for you today.
So I went to the 3rd floor of Dover.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to get, some cologne, fragrance, that shit. I was like, oh, let me get something new that I don't know.
Yeah.
Try to open myself to new shit. So I saw this zero shit, right? And you know how they have like the sample bottles? The sample bottle of this shit was empty. Like
Zero.
it didn't have anything in it. And I was
like never had anything in it.
Well, no, it was. Well, I was like, yo, is this it? Is this it?
Yeah. Is there nothing in
And
it?
then so the cat that was on the floor, I was like, yo, bro, is that the concept? Like, there's nothing in here? That's kind of fire. And it's called Zero? And he was like, oh no, we just ran out. I was like, oh, word? Wow. So I bring that up because when you're talking about like form factors and like there was an emotional interaction that I had with that person at Dover.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't functional.
Mm.
Meaning to say, I feel like we've over-indexed on function. We've over-indexed on, does this work? As opposed to, how does this make me feel?
Mm-hmm.
You know? We need to get back into that emotional feel conversation. Because when I was in college, going back to Carnegie Mellon, and this is something I brought up with Sean, one of my favorite designers, industrial designers, was this designer, Philippe Starck. Anybody know Philippe Starck?
Mm-hmm.
Philippe Starck, one of his most iconic pieces of design is this lemon juicer. If you follow my family affair
Quick plug.
Instagram, you'll see a video of me using this product because I'd never seen anybody use this. It's a juicer. So you literally cut a lemon and you squeeze that shit and then the lemon comes out. But it looks like an alien. It looks like some crazy mutant type shit. And when I was in school in design, I didn't evaluate anything based on how well it worked.
Mm.
Like function was not the
priority.
No.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, that shit's sick.
Yeah.
Or I had like an emotional response to an object as opposed to, oh, how functional is this?
Yeah.
Is this gonna get me here, or how am I gonna compare this to my phone? You know, like
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that stuff. Like
Little bit of like Virgil ironic detachment energy.
Oh! So wait, let's drop that. Express that.
Yeah. So I mean, like
Because we're on a Virgil
Yeah.
mode here, okay?
the entire idea of like quotes, right, is this idea of ironic detachment. So
Okay.
like you put the like central object in quotes, you're allowed to ironically detach yourself from it, which allows you to manipulate it because you're detached from it.
Nice.
And I think like this idea of like an object being sort of like detached from its function is almost like to me it's very millennial core of like ironic detachment as a core purpose of interacting with an object because you're allowed to sort of place your feelings over the actual maybe thing that you're supposed to get out of said function, right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, I like the feeling of putting lemons on this thing. I actually don't care about the functional lemonade that comes out of it.
No, that's what happened is that I use this juicer every day.
Oh,
and
that's crazy.
And it's not the most functional thing.
Yeah.
It's because it's a ritual that I've chosen to do because it makes me feel joyful and brings me back to when I was first getting into design.
Yeah.
And reminds me of like, yo, this is like one of the things that you saw when you were a kid about what excited you about the space.
Mm.
So that's why I have that in my life. It's like, it's kind of a callback to that and a reminder to be like, yo, it's not always functional.
Yeah.
It's not always like, it's not always engineering.
Yeah.
There's emotion to this. It's emotional design. Yatu, emotional design on some Donald Norman joints, Yeah, exactly. And that's right. That's on the cover, Donald Norman, emotional design. The Juicy Sailor by Philippe Stark was on the cover of that book. So getting back to your question, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think there's an aspect of that question that tends to assume that function is the dominant way that we should evaluate things of design now. Whereas maybe there was a moment in time where function and emotion were more balanced. I think the screen-based technologies, like if you look at phones pre-iPhone, there was a lot of expressiveness.
Yep.
We talk a lot about we talk about 20 years ago Sony.
Yeah.
Sony is the shit from a design point of view, because when you don't have to design around a screen all the time, you could do some crazy ass shit.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was the era that I came up with from a design point of view. It was like, oh, yo, you're gonna put that, I'm gonna hold it like this, or I'm gonna nap this, like, oh, that's dope. I'm have all these options. Now it's like there's not many options for technology, and I think that's really affecting people's ability to be open to options.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think this is the perfect segue into the one tweet I'm going to pull from you, and then we're going to go to Q&A. You tweeted maybe a couple months ago, to be ready is to be open. So why don't you sort of like close us on that, and then we'll do Q&A.
Wow. Well,
Now that you're signed up.
that tweet was inspired by a relationship I was in, or a relationship I'm trying to be in.
Too true.
And sometimes people aren't open because they're not ready. I think that goes a lot for many relationships you have in your life, whether it's with people or opportunities or choices.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're not ready. Sometimes maybe I wasn't ready to hear the source material of my hip hop tapes, but somebody thought I was. Maybe I wasn't ready to design UI, but somebody thought I was. Maybe I wasn't ready to do a talk at New York Fashion Week, but somebody thought I was.
Go.
I got something. I always think something for Reggie. Little gift, because he's been so gracious, as well as everybody that I met through Reggie is like my heart. Because like I've been always wanting to tap in with like cats like y'all over here. It's hard to find people that relate to you. So Reggie, Sean, Yatu, Norm, like that's my A-team, motherfuckers, for real, in New York. But I wanted to give you something that I brought from SF. So we often talk a lot about, I think one of the conversations we talk about is Next Computer.
Oh my God.
And maybe could you talk a little bit about Next and like the remember we talked about like the product versus the brand?
Yeah. So I've been doing a slight deep dive on like Next, which as I'm sure many of you know, like when Steve gets kicked out of Apple because the original Macintosh was a financial failure. So he gets kicked out of Apple and he starts Next, and Next is sort of like, you know, it's like his revenge body era basically. And what I learned that was really interesting is like Steve's already super rich, right? Because Apple was already public, he has money, and unlike this sort of like scrappy ethos of like we're gonna build this shit in the garage, he has so much money that one of the first 10 hires at Next is an interior designer. An interior designer like makes Next this swaggiest office. They get like the most expensive office in Palo Alto and or Cupertino, I forget which, you know, whatever, Bay. And in short, like Next is just an insane, just money hole failure. It's about to run out of cash until oil billionaire in Texas, Perot, gives them like, I think something like $100 million or something.
You're talking about Ross Perot?
Yeah. Ross Perot sees a program about Steve Jobs building Next. They're about to run out of money, but Steve is, you know, master manipulator. And he gives him $100 million, and he says, "Steve, you set the terms." Now, I don't know how many of you have raised money from venture people before. No one says that to you. I don't care who. No one says, "Yeah, you set the terms, bud." So he gets this money. they launched like the next cube, which again, catastrophic failure. It's so expensive. They're trying to sell to universities. I don't know if any of you have sold to universities before. I have. Don't ever sell to universities. They're slow. They're bureaucratic. Everything that Steve hates, like canonically. And the device is too expensive. Anyway, this is what we were talking about. Basically, the reason Next becomes a success is because they also create a factory in California to manufacture the Next computer. Also insane. Anyway, he does everything wrong. He does every single thing wrong. They end up firing most of the team, and then they build the Next Step OS, which is the operating system that they eventually sell to Apple for about $500 million, and that turns into Steve's wedge back into Apple, and then he's able to like get the board to rally behind him. They boot out Gil Armelio, and then the golden era of Apple begins as a function of that. But we were talking about Next recently, and it's actually dizzying how bad Steve is at Next. Anyway,
so I have two
branding
things.
A1.
I have two things. You know, we connect a lot on books.
Yeah.
And fly books
Yeah.
too, design books. So this is a gift that I want to give to Reggie. This is a book called Thoughts on Design. It's by Paul Rand. It's like an OG copy, bro. Okay? Can you?
Paul Rand isn't like design the Next logo, Paul Rand.
Yes.
Okay, so everyone knows like the Next. Sorry, now we're just in computer history time. Is everyone aware of like the Next logo? Okay.
It's in here.
Yeah. Paul Rand designed the Next logo. This is like the iconic designer, human. Yeah. I don't even know how much more I can say other than
Let's
that.
see if I can find it. It's in here. It should be in here.
It should. I mean.
Or maybe this is pre-Next.
That's
actually.
crazy.
This is actually, I think this is pre-Next because this is a published.
So one funny thing as you're looking for that,
Yeah.
that I'm actually curious
Oh,
about.
published in 1970. Bro.
Oh damn. Okay, so one curious.
But he did
thing,
the IBM logo.
Yeah, that's right. Which
Westing-
is also really funny when you think about.
Yeah.
That.
That's sure.
I feel like one thing that happens in the Valley today. Thank you. I'm talking so I don't cry. I feel one funny thing that happens in the Valley today is sort of this collection of OG Apple people, right? Like Brian Chesky very famously, even most recently, talked about like two people from Apple that he like sniped to like really guide him through like design and advertising. Steve sniped very legendary people for Apple, as well as for Next. Like, what do you think is? I swear this is the last thing before Q&A. What do you think is sort of like happening for like designer founder archetypes and like the future of like these archetypes? Like, where do we have to go as people to bring in genuine alternatives? Because we can't mimetically copy these folks and think that we're going to bring about alternatives.
Yeah. Has anybody seen The Last Dance, Chicago Bulls documentary? Okay. I feel like we're in that moment in technology right now where it's like Chicago Bulls, they're trying to win another championship, but the team has to work together. And I feel like a lot of these like one-man founder archetypes, that's Jordan. It can't be just Jordan by himself. It's got to be the Bulls. It's got to be the Chicago Bulls. It's got to be RZA and Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah.
It's got to be crews, like teams.
Yeah.
Like the A-team, like these guys that I'm talking with over here. So like, I feel like if there's any sort of thing that I'm seeing as something that I would encourage you all to do is make things with your friends. Make things happen with your friends. And get out of this one person mentality. We call it ecosystems as opposed to ecosystems, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I think that I'm encouraging everybody to start working together, collaborating. Teamwork makes the dream work. Get off of this solo shit. The only solo shit that's dope is Frank Ocean's track.
He's rapping right now.
Yeah. So that's what I guess that's how I'd like to answer that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. All right, we're doing 3 questions and then we're gonna get the fuck out of here. And by that I mean drink. Los, because your hand went up before.
Haha, my man. What's up, man?
Yeah.
This guy got to ask some crazy questions.
Okay, so I've been really into this movie recently called Swingers.
Oh, word. Okay.
Jon Favreau.
Yeah. Damn. What a
This is Los's new personality that he's loading right now.
Love this book.
Yeah.
Watch now. But so Jon Favreau wrote the script for that, and he sort of tells a story about like how he wrote all these brilliant scripts, but he had this issue where it's like he didn't have money to produce them. So then instead of actually trying to raise money, he decided to write a script that he could do for super cheap, like 200K or something, and then that became Swingers, where it's like you see all these dim light scenes and everything. So now to your point of like build with friends.
Yeah.
I think like pre-AI, like most people in their heads, especially first-time founders, it's like, I don't know how to code, I don't know how to build this.
Yeah.
Every day that's going to be easier.
Yeah.
Right? Like AI, Cursor,
Yeah.
Forge.
Yeah.
People don't know about Forge yet. That's up next, right? So
Good plug.
so then you don't need money to build it, but still working with your friends, you feel like you need money to grow it, to spread it. So I'm sort of curious in your design process with the pin. A lot of that I've been thinking about is like, instead of like how Favreau rewrote the script to be something that's easy to like film, is there something about building a V1 through V100 of a product that is easy to market because it elicits reaction, criticism, something insane out of people that makes them want to talk about and spread it online, something like inherently about
Yeah.
works like that?
It's a great question. I feel like if I had to, the pin has received very disparate reviews.
Can we ask the pin what people think of it?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. What do people think about Humane's AI pin? It's great, great. Might be allowed.
Checking. Most reviews of the Humane AI pin are negative, citing limited features, technical issues, and high cost. Some positive feedback highlights its innovative vision feature, but overall, it doesn't meet expectations.
Actually, let's
She's honest about
yeah,
it.
let's take a look at this and tell me what you see.
There are about 20 people in the room, some holding drinks. A tripod is in the foreground.
That's it? Okay, interesting. Wait, so okay, so I want to get back to that. So the a lot of the reviews for the pin have been relates to another tweet.
Yeah.
The feeling when the people with the least amount of context have the most amount of influence. So a lot of people online have a sense of what this thing is, but they haven't actually interacted with anybody or seen it themselves in reality. And so when you're talking about marketing, when you're talking about trying to get funding on something, I think the moment you start to build in public with people who are excited about something, like I was talking about earlier, where, this might not, it's not a thing yet. It really is up to the people excited about the thing to build some sort of, I mean, I was talking to Sean earlier about the different types of people that you guys are connected to and the network effect of getting this event together, right? Like, I'm like a nobody. No one knows who I am and shit. So it's like, to have you guys all here based on actual personal relationships that you know of people in reality, not on a timeline and not on some like count, view count shit. Some people's views is their overview. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, I'm right here. And we need to get back to like, we're right here. Like, so to me, if there's any sort of, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm kind of like, there's going to be an alternative to how people start to make something successful. And it's not going to be like the typical, like, come up with an idea, think it's done, market it, hire an ad agency to front like they know what it is, and you pay all that money to that person who has, all they want to do is win awards. You got the people actually building stuff like Yanir, Liz, Sneha, where's my Humane people at? Mahek. You have Humane people here who are actively building this, that are starting to use it and champion it in the ways that they use it. This is a very personal thing. So to even like market something very individual is a freaking conflict.
Yeah.
You know, I might use it differently than you. So how do you market that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, you know, everybody's going to use this in their own way. And I think that's what's in conflict with marketing, because marketing typically is like, who's like a freaking everybody type shit.
Yeah, it goes back to our conversation when I said like promotion is distortion.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny, like Apple, very prominent advertiser, Steve, reality distortion field, advertising distortion field. There's a there's a lot there. Okay, next question. Just because I know you too well, all the way in the back corner.
So, Oboku, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. What's your name, bro?
Oboku.
Oboku, nice to meet you.
So, you mentioned earlier about being sensitive to like the current context of people you're designing for.
Yes.
How do you balance that sensitivity without letting it bias you too much? Or like, alternatively, creating or designing something that's novel enough to pique interest, but isn't so novel that people are just like, what is this? I'm not really.
Could you offer maybe an example?
As in, well, I guess, for example, with the main pin, people just don't get it yet. Right?
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm curious, in the process of designing it, did you, like, what was it like thinking about, okay, we're creating this product, we have to be sensitive to how people are interacting with technology today. Take that into some consideration, but don't let that bias so much so that it's meant to impact the product form to the point where it's not it, right? Or it's just another screen, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a great question. That kind of relates to a conversation I had with a very prominent VC person in the Bay as I was leaving Apple, somebody who is technology and culture related. I was able to get a meeting with this person. And his encouragement for me as I was leaving Apple was like, you have to choose between, are you doing My Dark Twisted Fantasy or Yeezus? You know, are you going to make the album that everybody's going to love because everybody hates your ass right now because you said some shit to somebody? Or you're going to fucking go raw and be like, this is my shit, you know? And so I think that there's an aspect of that question that you have to make a choice to, with this, right? This isn't for everybody right now. And for people to assume that it's for everybody right now is probably not the best assumption. Most of the fly shit is on some underground shit. Niche shit, like this. Yeah, I'm going through Chinatown, didn't know this was up here. And all over here. You know, this isn't like fucking the Strand, you know what I'm saying? So you have to know what stage of the thing that you want to put out in the world and the characteristics of that thing to find the audience that will resonate with that. And the more that that's in conflict, you're not going to move. And I feel like that's something that we've been challenged by a lot. I am here to help that with some other folks. That's why I'm here, really. You know, so I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of the vibe that I was on. Yeah.
All right, two more. Yes.
So it's a kind of a few different questions all in one.
What's your name, man?
Evan.
Evan, nice to meet you.
So I like your perspective on calling it an iPhone, like UI phone.
Yeah.
And then I like the idea earlier about how does your perspective as a society or as an organization change because like Amsterdam as a culture is very different because they're all a biking city. And so this kind of brings together two different points of like you want to remove impediments to interaction with humans, and then two, you want everyone to also use it together. So how do you envision that? It's something like a Humane where it's partly really individualistic, but also it can be very collaborative, right? So like how do you bring that dichotomy together and then in some sense, business sense, like that people want to use?
Yeah, I feel like if I wanted to answer that question, given where we are with it now, and maybe to tap into the trend that I feel needs to happen with teams as opposed to individuals, like I could certainly see a group of people using this as a creative team. You know, so I don't have to use my hands. I don't have to be like in a screen. I could talk to Reggie. He and I can have a conversation with this, and then like not have my hands free, so I can like do my freaking sculpture or whatever. You know, so I feel like, and then the communication angle between it's a phone, So to be able to be in audio synchronicity with someone else that you're actively working with to create something, I think this could be a tool for that. I think like the dominant way that maybe it has been expressed is more from an individualistic point of view. And when you have a phone, it's better to call somebody, right? Like, why have a phone if you're not talking to somebody? So I think there's a aspect of how we need to reframe this product from the perspective of collaboration, communication, as opposed to individual kind of soloistic behavior, which kind of starts to amplify the founder solo thing.
Cool.
Just to clarify the question,
Okay.
is it like a reframing of existing use cases, but used differently, or is it an addition of something that's novel that, say, a traditional phone wouldn't be able to do that?
Yeah, I think it's all new. It's new. I mean, it's unfortunate. The thing that you want to do with something new is to use old shit to promote it. So, you know, to me, what's exciting about this and what was exciting about the phone is that it was a whole new lane. This is a whole new lane. Like, if you believe in being present and in the moment with people, who doesn't? That's a whole new lane, guys. Like, who's really actively creating a product that is looking out, not looking in right now? And that's audio based so that I can look at y'all. I'm just saying. So, you know, it's a whole new lane. It's really up to you. It's not for everybody. Try it. You might like it. You might not. You know?
Cool. All right, last question, Cam.
This is really challenging because there's a lot of different thoughts that are coming up.
Sure.
So I wanted to say thank you first off for
Absolutely.
speaking. I'm from Baltimore.
Oh, word? Hell yeah.
I actually interned at Apple as well.
Oh,
So my experience has been like, you know, very weird.
okay.
intense.
When were you there?
I was there in 2016.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So,
So I was there.
yeah, I have like, I'm trying to.
Shout out to the hat.
But basically, I wanted to ask you how you think of AI pen fitting into kind of like the landscape of technology.
No, it's cool. Yeah, take your
How
time.
you see it? I'm thinking about like anime.
Oh, yeah,
and,
sure.
Like, how does it fit into like a new world?
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of going into his question around the culture. Of,
Sure.
You know, like places like Amsterdam versus the U.S.
Yeah.
So how can you imagine, like, if there was a brand new country,
Yeah.
if AI pen was the main
Yeah.
thing,
Mhm.
what would that look like? Can we just dream?
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that question. That's a great question.
It's barely a question.
You know, we're in New York, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of ill shit in New York, outside. There's a lot of ill history that people don't know about. There's a lot of cats that passed away that like he kept those stories, right? Of spots around here that ill shit happened, studios or fucking art shit or whatever. And so to me, it's like I want to go around the city with this and be like, yo, did you know that so and so did this over here? Blah blah blah. I'm like learning from my actual physical environment.
City has classroom vibe.
You know, yeah, and like the thing is that I feel like what this is starting to provocate, think about the ways we learn shit based on typing in a Google search field or watching somebody else on a YouTube video do the shit. So if you have a flat tire by the side of the road, you could ask this, how do I fix a flat tire? Oh, actually, let's try this out. I have a flat tire right now, what should I do?
First, make sure you're in a safe location away from traffic. If you have a spare tire and the necessary tools, you can change the tire yourself. If not, you might need to call for roadside assistance. Would you like help finding a nearby tire repair shop or contacting roadside assistance?
Okay, see? I'm actually learning from my own physical lived experience. Think about how we learn. That's a whole new world, or an old world. So it's really up to y'all, for real.
Cool.
I got one more thing. This is Apple shit. One more thing. I know I want to take this moment based on the solo founder thing. Like, we're going to dead that right now. Because we're on some new teen shit, okay? And the way that we're going to do this is that when Steve Jobs passed away, the entire campus came together and paid respects to him. Everybody got something that day, and I'm going to give you one of them. It's a copy of his speech from Stanford called Remembering Steve. This is only for employees, bro. So it says, on June 12, 2005, so this is it, okay? I want y'all to work together. Make things with your friends, make things happen with your friends, all right?
All right. God.
Don't let it out.
Don't let it out. Don't let it out. Good friend practices. Thank you all for coming. We have too many bottles of wine back there. We have these CDJs. Thank you, Earshot. USB Club assorted members are about to hop on some ones and twos, and so, you know, if you got the shtick on you, get in line. And then, yeah, we're gonna clear out these chairs and shit, and that's gonna be that. We're gonna vibe out here until like 6-ish, 6:30, and that'll be that. So,
Reg, give us a prompt, a question, something that can break the ice for people that don't know one another.
okay. There's a lot of new faces here. I don't know everyone either. Please do not ask, what do you do? Ask someone like the most recent thing that inspired them lately, and let that lead you down a little reference rabbit hole together. I'm sure you'll get to what each other do. So, that's that. Thank you all for being here.
Touched on basically what I wrote.